At exactly 3:45 p.m. on the 17th of January 2026, the oppressive heat of the Persian Gulf is torn apart by a single catastrophic decision. Without a warning call or a shot across the bow, the forward battery of an Iranian Moudge-class frigate erupts in a flash of orange fire. A high-explosive 76mm shell leaves the barrel at 3,000 feet per second, locked on a collision course with the superstructure of the USS Jack H. Lucas. There is no time for diplomacy, no time for de-escalation. The Iranian captain believes he has achieved the ultimate tactical surprise, striking a blow against American imperialism before the crew can even scramble to their battle stations. But his confidence is a fatal hallucination. He hasn't caught the Americans sleeping. He has fired into the teeth of the most advanced combat system on the planet. The shell is already being tracked. The response is already calculated, and the silence that follows will be deafening. The Iranian crew thought they were engaging a standard surface combatant, a target of opportunity they could bully for propaganda footage. They were wrong. They picked a fight with the USS Jack H. Lucas, the inaugural Flight III Arleigh Burke destroyer. This isn't just 9,700 tons of displacement steel, it is a $2 billion sovereign territory of the United States, a floating fortress designed to dominate the electromagnetic spectrum. Her 4 General Electric gas turbines generate over 100,000 shaft horsepower, enough raw energy to power a medium-sized city or drive the hull through heavy seas at speeds in excess of 30 knots without breaking a sweat. But the real weapon isn't the missiles in the tubes, it's the digital brain in the hull. The ship's Aegis Combat System Baseline 10 processes more data in a single minute than the entire Iranian Naval Command infrastructure handles in a fiscal quarter. While the Iranian fire control officers are manually adjusting dials and squinting through optical sights, the Jack H. Lucas is running thousands of simultaneous engagement simulations, predicting every possible trajectory of the incoming round and preparing a response that is mathematically perfect. The disparity is absolute. The Iranians brought Cold War-era hardware to a fight against 21st-century algorithmic warfare. They weren't just outgunned, they were technologically obsolete before they even loaded the breech. The incoming 76mm shell had barely cleared the muzzle brake when the Jack H. Lucas's primary sensor suite registered the threat. This is the combat debut of the AN/SPY-6 air and missile defense radar, a generational leap that makes previous systems look like pocket calculators. Unlike the passive arrays of the past, the SPY-6 utilizes gallium nitride technology to pump out 30 times the sensitivity of the older SPY-1 radars. It doesn't just see a blip, it creates a high-fidelity track file of a supersonic projectile not much larger than a soda bottle moving through sea clutter. While the Iranian radar operators were praying their targeting solution held true, the SPY-6 was already dissecting the physics of the attack. It calculated the shell's velocity, drag coefficient, and point of impact with terrifying precision. The system is designed to track over 1,000 targets simultaneously, from ballistic missiles in space to sea-skimming cruise missiles, so a single unguided artillery shell registered as a trivial variable. The Iranian ship tried to mask its signature with electronic countermeasures, blasting noise on standard frequencies, but against the SPY-6, that's like trying to hide a candle in front of a searchlight. The radar simply burned through the interference, locking onto the frigate's fire control director and hull simultaneously. The technology stripped away the fog of war instantly. There was no confusion, no ambiguity, just a stream of cold, hard data confirming that a hostile act was in progress, and the time for reaction was measured in microseconds. Inside the Combat Information Center, the atmosphere shifted instantly from routine watch standing to cold, lethal precision. Under the dim blue wash of tactical displays, there was no shouting, no cinematic drama, and absolutely no panic. Just the rhythmic, clipped cadence of professionals doing their jobs. A tactical action officer calmly turned a key, authorizing the system to engage. An operations specialist tagged the inbound projectile as a hostile vampire. Within the span of a single heartbeat, the ship's combat system had verified the track, classified the source, and distributed the targeting data across the entire battle group's network. While the Iranian crew was likely screaming orders and bracing for the recoil, the American sailors were executing a checklist with the detachment of accountants auditing a ledger. The system reacted so fast that the human operators almost seemed like observers to their own defense. There was plenty of time to acknowledge the threat, verify the rules of engagement, and still have a moment to sip coffee before the countermeasures even left the rail. 15:45 p.m. Impact was imminent, or so the Iranians believed, but the Jack H. Lucas operates inside a protective bubble defined by physics and algorithms. Before the 76mm shell could complete its arc, the ship's self-defense layer activated with terrifying autonomy. A single cell in the forward Mark 41 vertical launch system popped open. In a fraction of a second, an evolved Sea Sparrow Missile Block 2 roared out of the canister, riding a pillar of smoke and fire. This wasn't a fair fight. It was an execution. The ESSM, guided by the ship's localized fire control loop, intercepted the incoming artillery shell less than a mile from the ship. The collision occurred at Mach 3. The kinetic energy transfer vaporized the Iranian projectile instantly, turning a lethal weapon into a harmless cloud of shrapnel raining down into the sea. There was no explosion on the American deck, no damage control teams rushing to put out fires, just the fading smoke trail of a missile that had done its job with clinical perfection. On the bridge of the Iranian frigate, the crew likely froze. They had fired their best shot, their surprise attack, and the Americans had swatted it aside like a nuisance insect. The realization began to dawn that they had just made a miscalculation of historic proportions. 15:47 p.m. The silence that followed the interception was heavier than the gunfire. For 40 seconds, the radio waves remained static. The Iranian captain, perhaps paralyzed by the failure of his assault or waiting for a damage report that would never come, failed to turn his ship away. He maintained his hostile heading. This was the second fatal error. On the Jack H. Lucas, the rules of engagement had just shifted fundamentally. The status of the contact changed from track to hostile aggressor. The United States Navy does not absorb a first strike without a response. The tactical action officer didn't need to ask for permission to defend the ship. The authority was inherent. The goal now wasn't just survival. It was the total neutralization of the threat to ensure no second shot could ever be fired. The ANSPY-6 radar didn't just track the incoming shell, it had backtraced the trajectory to the exact gun mount on the Iranian ship's bow. The fire control solution was already locked. The ship's computers had analyzed the wind, the humidity, the roll of the ocean, and the relative speed of both vessels. The solution was 99.9% certain. 15:49 p.m. The order was given. The response would not be a warning shot. It would be a mobility kill, designed to surgically remove the Iranian vessel from the fight. The weapon of choice was not a missile this time, but the ship's own Mark 45 Mod 4 5-inch gun. This weapon is capable of firing guided munitions with pinpoint accuracy over the horizon. But at this range, it was a direct fire instrument of destruction. The turret rotated with smooth, hydraulic purpose. The autoloader rammed a high-explosive round into the breech. The entire process took seconds. While the Iranian ship was still trying to reload its main battery, the Jack H. Lucas fired. The recoil shuddered through the destroyer's frame, a physical manifestation of American resolve. The shell closed the distance in seconds, guided not just by optics but by the relentless data stream of the Aegis system. It was aimed specifically at the engineering section of the Moudge-class frigate, just above the waterline. The intent was clear: do not sink them, but make sure they never move under their own power again. The impact arrived with the force of a freight train. The American 5-inch shell struck the Iranian frigate exactly amidships, punching through the thin steel plating of the hull as if it were wet cardboard. Milliseconds later, the high-explosive warhead detonated inside the main machinery space. The result was catastrophic and instantaneous. The blast shredded the frigate's diesel engines and gas turbines, turning the ship's propulsion system into a twisted mass of superheated metal. The concussion wave buckled the bulkheads, severed main power conduits, and plunged the entire vessel into darkness. There was no dramatic fireball consuming the ship, just a sudden, violent venting of black smoke and steam as the vessel lost all forward momentum. In seconds, the Moudge-class warship was transformed from a predator into a burning, helpless hulk drifting aimlessly in the current. The fire control radar stopped spinning. The guns fell silent. The threat was not just suppressed, it was surgically lobotomized. Crucially, The Jack H. Lucas did not fire a second shot. The fire control computers had already assessed the damage via the SPY-6 radar, confirming that the target was mission killed. To continue firing would have been a waste of taxpayer ammunition. The American destroyer simply maintained its course and speed, sailing past the burning Iranian vessel with an air of supreme indifference. This was the ultimate insult. Sinking the ship would have made the crew martyrs. Leaving them alive, drifting in a broken vessel that requires a humiliating tow back to port, sends a far more potent message. It signaled that the United States Navy does not need to destroy you to defeat you. We can simply turn off your ability to fight and leave you to explain the failure to your superiors. The Jack H. Lucas didn't even alter its patrol pattern. It treated the engagement not as a battle, but as a minor navigational hazard that had been efficiently cleared. The cost analysis of this 40-second engagement paints a brutal picture. Iran just sacrificed a capital ship's operational status for a stunt that achieved absolutely nothing. They face millions in dry dock repairs and the humiliation of a public tow home. The United States Navy? We spent a single interceptor missile and one artillery shell. Financially, that's a rounding error in the defense budget. But the real damage is invisible. By going active with their fire control radars, the Iranians handed over their electronic soul. The SPY-6 system captured every frequency, pulse width, and modulation pattern. We now possess the unique acoustic and electronic signature of their fleet. They paid a heavy price to teach the U.S. Navy exactly how to defeat them in the future. Zero territorial gains, zero concessions, just a burning ship and a hard drive full of compromised data. Within 48 hours, Iranian state media released a heavily edited video package of the encounter. Set to triumphant martial music, the grainy footage showed the Jack H. Lucas sailing away, with subtitles claiming the heroic Islamic Republic Navy had forced the American aggressor to retreat from territorial waters. It was a masterclass in domestic propaganda, designed to salvage national pride from a tactical disaster. But in the age of networked warfare, the truth has a digital footprint. The Pentagon didn't bother with a press conference. They simply declassified the optical sensor logs from a circling MQ-4C Triton drone. The high-definition feed told a very different story. It showed the Iranian frigate dead in the water, venting black smoke, with fire crews scrambling in disarray across the deck. In contrast, the Jack H. Lucas was visible in the same frame, steaming steadily southward at a consistent 20 knots. The navigation logs released by the Navy were the final nail in the narrative coffin. They revealed that the American destroyer had not altered its course by a single degree during the entire engagement. No evasive maneuvers, no panic turns, no retreat. The ship had simply swatted down an incoming shell and disabled its attacker without even bothering to slow down. It treated a lethal engagement with the same level of concern a tanker captain reserves for a sudden gust of wind. This disconnect between Tehran's bluster and the cold reality of the drone footage illustrated the widening gap in modern naval doctrine. Iran views these encounters as theatrical performances for a domestic audience. The United States Navy views them as physics problems to be solved with minimum expenditure and maximum efficiency. The tactical exchange was over in less than 60 seconds, but the strategic lesson will resonate for decades. Iran wanted to demonstrate resolve. Instead, they demonstrated obsolescence. They sought to drag the United States into a messy, symmetrical firefight in the narrow waters of the Gulf. What they received was a masterclass in asymmetric dominance. The Jack H. Lucas didn't need to empty its magazines to win. It didn't need to call for air support. It barely needed to deviate from its routine. That is the terrifying reality facing any nation that chooses to test the boundaries of American naval power in the 21st century. You aren't just fighting a ship, you are fighting a networked intelligence that solves the problem of your existence before you can even reload. Some lessons in history are taught with massive explosions and sinking fleets. This one was taught with indifference. And for the commanders in Tehran watching their flagship drift helplessly on the tide, that quiet dismissal likely stung worse than any missile impact ever could. They came looking for a reaction. They got a shrug. Modern warfare is no longer defined by who fires the first shot, but by who calculates the final solution. The Jack H. Lucas proved that against a peerless technological advantage, bravery is just another variable to be factored out. Peace on the high seas isn't maintained by diplomatic promises. It is enforced by superior firepower and the demonstrated will to use it with surgical precision. If you found this breakdown of modern naval tactics valuable, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We bring you the unvarnished reality of military operations that the mainstream news won't show you.